Perhaps you'll recognize me if I take my glasses off, get rid of my social distancing mask, and I'll even expose my solar panel. My name's Jack Grove. I'm one of the co-founders at Zegrahm Expeditions, and it's a pleasure to be with you today via this Armchair Travelers program. I'd like to begin by thanking my good friend Rich Pageant. If you haven't seen his wonderful walk through his backyard in Minneapolis, you should see it. Thanks, Rich. In a few moments, we're going to get into my canoe, paddle through this beautiful mangrove forest. You can see a few people coming in here paddling their canoe. They too unknowingly are going to be in my video production for Zegrahm Expeditions. So, as I was saying, we'll get in the canoe and do a little paddle through the mangroves. It's a lovely day to do just that. Thanks for joining me. We're going to get into the canoe and go for a lovely late afternoon ride. By the way, if you have a keen eye, you may notice that it's not just a few minutes after I spoke here the last time. I waited several hours because the sun was really high. It was very hot. Right now, here in the Florida Keys, it's only about 84 Fahrenheit. No wind. It's a beautiful evening for a ride. So, I'm going to launch the canoe. Bear with me while I attempt to hold the camera, paddle the canoe, and talk to you at the same time. So here we go. We'll launch the canoe. Now all I need is my beautiful paddle I brought home from Micronesia. Isn't that cool? I received this as a gift from a gentleman on the atoll of Eutrophication. Perhaps some of you have been with Zegrahm Expeditions to that amazing, isolated, pristine atoll called Eutrophication in the Federated States of Micronesia in the state of Yap. But that's not the subject of this video. We're going to talk about mangroves and the importance that they play in the marine ecosystem around the world. So I managed to get in the canoe, get the camera set up on the tripod. All I have to do is untie my vessel and off we go for a little adventure. It's almost as much fun as a Zodiac, but it doesn't make as much noise and it gets much better gas mileage. So this is a first. It's not my first time in these mangroves. It is not the first time I've paddled a canoe, but it is, however, the first time that I've had a camera set up and I am attempting to narrate eloquently, of course. Ah, yes. So far, so good. I am riding, I should say we are riding the incoming current. And a lovely evening it is. So many of you who are listening to this blog, Armchair Travelers program, have been with me, other naturalists that work with Zegrahm Expeditions around the tropics of the world. So you've gone through many mangrove forests. You've heard lots of narration. And I'll inevitably repeat some of those natural historic facts that are of interest. But since this is pretty much my backyard, I will share some things that you may not have heard or be cognizant of. This is a red mangrove, and the genus is Rhizophora. The species, interestingly, is Mangle, M-A-N-G-L-E. These are the seed pods of the red mangrove. It makes them very easy to identify. Also, they have large glossy leaves you can see in the trees around me. You also notice the long roots going down into this mud, and these trees are saltwater dependent. They cannot survive without salt water. There's 3 other kinds of mangroves here in South Florida. In fact, throughout the Caribbean. This is the red. We also have the white, the black, and the buttonwood. I find it zoogeographically intriguing that all 4 of those species are also in the Galapagos. For those of you who know me, my driving passion in life is the natural history of the Galapagos. I'm right now working on the 2nd edition of the fishes at the Galapagos, so I kind of correlate everything in the living world with that incredible archipelago in one way or another. So think about the fact that these seed pods of Rhizophora mangle are distributed widely throughout the western tropical Atlantic, aka Caribbean, or is it Caribbean? I like to call it the western tropical Atlantic because there's no argument about how to pronounce it. The point I wanted to make is that prior to 2 million years ago, ocean currents were flowing from the west Atlantic into the eastern Pacific, and these seed pods were being dispersed. Today, all 4 species here in the Florida Keys are also in the Galapagos, and there's this thing called genetic isolation, and you can't become different from your precursors unless you're first geographically isolated, but then you need to be genetically isolated as well, and there's a difference. Okay, I'm going to keep paddling because I'd like to get into the lake. It's actually starting to get a little bit late. I mentioned that one of the risks of living here in the Florida Keys is the reality that it's in the hurricane belt, and there is a risk that you take in living here. I feel better that I'm surrounded by mangroves, but the other disadvantage is the insects, and here in these mangroves, the mosquitoes are voracious, and so are the no-see-ums. And it's about time that they come out. So right now, it's just early enough. It's about 2 hours before sunset. And we're coming to one of my favorite parts of this mangrove forest. And hopefully you'll have a look back at it if I can get through here without hitting the canoe. Isn't this beautiful? I love to sit on that tree that's off here to my right. Just look at that beautiful trunk. This estuary, embayment, is actually going through a natural process. It's called eutrophication. The leaves of these mangroves fall off, they go to the bottom of the estuary, and they decompose and become detritus and mud. And with time, they will fill in the estuary. And once the red mangroves have established, then the white and the buttonwood and finally the black come in. There's a real ecological. Oh, I just saw a tarpon. There's 2 tarpon. Wow. Oh, I wish I could turn the camera. They were small ones, maybe only 20 pounds or so. Don't tell your friends who are fishermen. I don't want them coming in and messing up my tranquility, but that is nice. I was mentioning about the
eutrophication and the sedimentation here in this estuary, and that is in itself a natural process. But for those of you who know the Florida Keys, you'll be aware of the fact that there was a bridge built back in the early 1900s by a man named Henry Fowler, and that was originally, it was a railroad. He put the railroad in, and then it became a highway. At first, the highway was broken in several places, and you had to get on a ferry to go from one of the Florida Keys to the other. The reason I'm mentioning this part of the history of the Florida Keys is that this estuary used to be connected to Florida Bay, essentially to the Gulf of Mexico. So if we were here in 1790, for example, we could paddle through here from the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico, and I can say without a doubt, I bet these waters were full of tarpon and manatee and sea turtles and lots of seabirds, including the coastal species called the roseate spoonbill. A beautiful bird. I don't like birds myself, but no, I'm only kidding. I'd love to throw that in because as you know, we have several world-famous ornithologists who are excellent naturalists, and I have the pleasure of working with them. And so often they talk about birds, 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 to the extent that one of the papers I am working on right now is fish that eat birds. Think about it. There are more than a few kinds of fish that eat birds, but that is a different story because I've never seen a fish here eat a bird. I have seen it happen in the Seychelles, and I saw it once when I was a kid on the Susquehanna River. But I'm getting off, that's in Pennsylvania, I'm getting off the subject, aren't I? So I think I'm going to stop the video for a moment, and I'm going to continue into the mouth of Dove Lake, and then I'll show you around in the lake with the camera in my hands. Don't go away. We have a really exciting show coming up. This is where Dove Creek empties into this large body of water called Dove Sound, or sometimes called Dove Lake. And we'll do a little panorama here, looking around the lake. I will do this very carefully so I don't run the risk of going for a swim. Not that I would mind personally, but I don't want to dump my camera. Oh, with this late afternoon light, the reflections on these prop roots of the red mangroves are just gorgeous. It is so tranquil. You can see the seed pods I was talking about earlier. Quite a few of them here. And by the way, those seed pods will float for many, many months on the open sea. There's a term for that. Biologically, it refers to their capacity to disperse. And that term is vagility. An organism which is vagile has the capacity to disperse its gametes or its spores, its offspring. And the red mangrove is an excellent disperser. So their level of vigility is quite high. I wish that osprey would come back. So I think I'll begin the paddle home. I will be going against the current now, so I will have more difficulty trying to run the camera and the paddle and direct the canoe. So I might turn it off for a little bit and proceed into the creek.
breaking a sweat here. We're headed home now. Up the creek, or down the creek, but with the paddle. What's that old adage about up the creek without a paddle? Oh, there's the osprey. There he is. Oh, but I can't point the camera at him. Oh, he has a fish. Cool. Thank you. Isn't this fun? Well, I wish it was not an armchair travel experience, but we're going to get through this. You know, I wrote in my journal the other day that I feel like I'm living the script of two intertwined movies, The Twilight Zone and Groundhog Day. And I have found myself asking my phone, what day is this? I mean, not just once, sometimes I was asking 3 times a day, but I gave up on that. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.